Previously on agentpalmer.com, The Dying Art of the Animation Cel, Michael Caine does his best spy work as author of Fast-Paced Deadly Game, and since last episode, it appears Steph and I are getting enough sleep to function. This is the Palmer Files, episode 152, with the return of one of my favorite Canadians and just one of my best friends, Chris Maier. He's here to tackle some of Proust's Questionnaire, and aside from catching up, we'll discuss relationship communication, accountability, Canada, misfortune, and much, much more. Are you ready? Let's do the show! Hello and welcome to the Palmer Files. I'm your host, Jason Stershik, also known as Agent Palmer, and on this 152nd episode is my friend and probably my Canadian sponsor, Chris Maier. Chris is back after too long, but we're also recording after too long as well. More on that during the episode. But what is this? This is a series of episodes that will be released over the course of the next few months where my friends, specifically those from the friendship episodes, get to come on the show and ask me a select few questions from Proust's Questionnaire. There are 17 questions. Chris is going first, so he gets to choose from them all. And the next time we do this, Bill won't be able to re-ask any questions already used, then Chris Hughes, then Jason Zapata, and who knows what happens with the remainder of the questions at this time. A link to the Proust Questionnaire Wikipedia entry is in the show notes if you want a history lesson. I won't spoil which questions Chris Maier asks, but know that we catch up and talk about change and some things that stay the same, as well as celebrations, accountability, relationships, and Canada. All of this and much more is coming your way shortly. But first, remember that if you want to discuss this episode as you listen or afterwards, you can find all related ways to contact Chris and myself in the show notes. I highly suggest you listen to How Was Your Week, Honey? And our liner notes. Don't forget, you can see all of my writings and rantings on agentpalmer.com. And of course, email can be sent to thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. So without further ado, let's get into it. Chris, welcome back to the show. It's been 4 years. No,
That's it?
It's been 5 years since you've been on this show. It's been 3 years since I was on your show.
Okay. That makes sense.
And I wish that we would talk more often, but it feels like we play phone tag more than we talk.
Right. And I think, you know, I don't want to bury the lead, but we'll get there.
Okay.
Famous phrase I say on my show with my wife.
Well, that's fine, because if we don't, it just means that you have to come back.
Agreed.
That's fine. I'm all right with that. So
right on.
There are some firsts happening here. This is the first recording I've done with a guest not being my wife since the baby was born. That's one.
Okay.
Number two, obviously those time frames for you and myself recording, where we used to maybe record twice a month at minimum.
Right.
And this is the first time you and I are recording with me in my basement studio. And this is
great.
Perhaps the earliest we have ever recorded together in the day. Like it's basically 11 a.m. for me. It's 8 a.m. for you. We're usually on the PM side of everything.
Well, that's right. Usually this mug is filled with bourbon or scotch or something instead of the coffee
we
have today.
So and mine's always been filled with coffee, except now mine's full strength. Yeah.
Right. Well, you were still using coffee to wake you up, because I think with the recording schedule that we had, it might have been 6 or 7 for me, but it was 9 or 10.
Oh yeah.
We were usually finishing at like 1 a.m. for you.
Yeah, it was. And look, that schedule probably I could probably pull that schedule off right now.
Yeah, I guess with the baby, your hours are different. I just don't know, again, because of that longer format of recording for that show we were doing. You know, I don't know that you have 3 solid hours in a row though.
I have a wife and partner who is behind me in all of the endeavors. So like I do have that time. I just have to schedule that time. It's
of course.
Yeah, it's not like it used to be where like I could be a fill-in guest at a moment's notice.
Now you know how I felt back when you and I were trying to record, and you're like, well, why don't you just do this random time and place? And
no,
I'm like,
I think I always knew, but just, it's
now you're living it.
Yeah, now I'm living it. Yeah, it's definitely a change. And
I used to laugh all the time when you say, well, I'm busy. Go, brother.
No.
Now you're busy.
Now it's about priority. It depends.
That's right. Yes.
And it depends on the structure and the, how we divide our work, or divide and conquer, so to speak. And
Sure.
at the moment, Steph's still, by the time this airs, she'll be back to work. But right now, as we're recording, like, she's still,
they give you mat leave down there?
Give is a strong word. That's yeah, no. In fact, I just read somewhere about what Canadians get for that, and I was like, it's like, oh, that's not fair.
Or it is fair, and I don't know why we don't do that.
Yeah, well, I know why we don't do that. That's a different podcast. That's for another time. That's a longer topic. Look, obviously life changes have happened.
Yes.
And obviously, longtime listeners of the show will have heard your wife more recently than they've heard you. But, you are still doing a weekly podcast with your wife.
Correct.
That has maintained. That is crazy.
It is that you think, until just recently we missed a couple, but we went a solid 6 years, I think, with only one episode missed of How Was Your Week, Honey? Podcasts we started together. I had just gotten into podcasting. It was something that we were toying with, and it actually took her going away to her sister's, I believe, to help her out with her baby. That, us talking back and forth while she was gone, I'm like, this is the podcast.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is what we're doing right now. Her letting me know what was happening there, the day-to-day of the week she was gone, and me doing the same here. And we've just turned it into a date night and, quite frankly, a therapy session. The fact that my wife and I, without fail, 99% of the time, meet for an hour plus every week. I mean, there's stuff we've worked out that I'm sure the listeners aren't even aware that we're actually working things out between. Yeah, we're through. That's a better way of putting it. There's some stories, or that we even hit a different angle of a story that we didn't get out when we were talking, maybe when emotions were more heightened or fresh.
Yeah.
Or there's things that we, even stories about each other that we learn because, something else has happened in our life. And then we get into this conversation for the podcast. And then you're like, well, I do remember this time that ...
Yeah.
And so it goes. So it's been great for our relationship. And it's funny because when we meet other couples who find out what we've been doing for 425 episodes now.
Yeah.
They're like, we could never do that.
Well,
we kill each other.
So they say, okay, so when Steph moved in,
yes,
you guys and a few others would ask, so when are you guys doing your podcast?
Right.
And when I launched my show, which was after she moved in, people are like, well, when are you going to do the show with Steph? And so these have been questions that have happened. Now, she ended up being on an episode we did, 50 questions. So it wasn't really conversational. Like we did the 50 questions.
It was guided.
Then we did a retelling of a story we told on your show, How Was Your Week, Honey? Which was, we did a 2-parter about us meeting and getting together and the wedding. So we had those. And then most recently, in the episodes that precede this one, we did You and Me Makes 3 and Being New Parents. And so those were 2. And I just recorded or I just edited the second one of those, the On Being New Parents thing, where we kind of talk about bringing him home and like kind of that lack of sleep thing. And the only reason I bring it up is because it's one of those things where I know what you're talking about, because during that episode, like, Steph and I have a great relationship, but at the same time, when you sit down on mic and you're professional podcaster, I guess we'll say, because we've done it long enough. Experienced. You always give space. Now, you might want to fill the silence, but you'll always give space. Like, you tell that story, that's fine. And one of the things that, in hindsight, like I haven't done the intro and the outro for that, so I don't know what it'll be, what you heard 2 weeks ago. But like, having just edited it, I'm just like, wow, like really putting a point on the friction in this house over the last few weeks has been a lack of communication due to being tired and a lack of sleep.
Sure.
It's been nothing else. Like, we can put a T on, like, that's why kind of we raise voices. It's like, because I thought I told you this.
Right.
But you didn't.
Thought I meant that.
Uh-huh.
And yes. And those are the communication breakdowns that happen in every relationship. And there's the narrative in your head, and then there's the narrative in their head, and then there's what's actually happening.
And it doesn't have to do anything with having a baby either. Like, this, you could just have a rough
week. It's another input into the equation.
Yes.
Is what it is.
Yep.
Yeah. And Kristen had come up with this the other day, and she's like, the thing about podcasting with one another, and the other reason why it's like therapy, is it's like the third party, the objective persons in the room, right? Because you are recording for an audience, however big or small that may be. So because you have that
awareness
and an unnamed observer of your conversation, you take the time to go, well, but here's why.
Yeah. And you also, you not only get into the why, but you explain it a little bit more. So in explaining it, sometimes you come to a different conclusion, because normally like every couple has shorthand. And when you get
hear our shorthand on our podcast,
and when you get into that shorthand, sometimes you miss over a very important word, like had, was, could, should. Like, there are some very thank you. You're welcome. Like, there are some very specific words that get left out of those things, and it's just like, all right, okay. And so the other thing is, listeners can't see this, obviously, and you can't see this either based on the camera angle. But to my left is a in-person studio, which is how the last 2 episodes were recorded.
Right.
We sat across a table from each other in a legitimate, like, it's, not the way it used to be.
Face-to-face, looking each other in the eye.
Yep.
Yes.
No monitors in the way like it used to be in my old setup. And so, and it's a little bit more comfortable than the last time she was on the show. So there's a part of it where now I'm getting, well, I guess we could start our own show now. And I don't know if we have more or less to say. I obviously there's more going on in our lives than there was. But I've listened to your show, Dark Angels and Pretty Freaks, even back in the day, couples things.
Right.
It doesn't matter what's going on in your life. There's if you're in the general statement, if you're in a healthy relationship, you'll find something to talk about.
Well, okay. So
or you'll be fine with silence, but that doesn't work on a podcast. No. But like, you don't need to stretch. Like, you can find any topic, throw it in, and go.
Well, okay. So Kristen and I will come home from work or back from something or see something when we're out. And the common phrase you'll hear between us is, "Ooh, write that down. We should talk." Because for 2 reasons. One, it's good to have a list of topics if you don't have somewhere to go, recording any kind of show. But the other thing is, again, it's just day to day for us. You forget, like, we've done it where we're like, oh, this, and this as the week's gone on. And then you sit down to record and go, what happened this week?
Yeah.
Right. And I had that great story. What was it about? And to your other point, although where there's been weeks where we haven't had specific topics, or she's like, I've got 2 things and you've got nothing. No matter what, it seems that once we sit down to record, and maybe that's us or maybe that's couples in general, but as soon as we sit down, we always find our way. There's always something to talk about.
Yeah.
And one story begets the next, so on and so forth. And we might talk about something as inane as our trip to the grocery store that week. But there's always some sort of relationship aspect about that we wander into. But
so there's this other point to it where it's like, I think one of those things that's always been the cliche of like 60s and 70s and 80s sitcoms was like, mom and dad come home and don't talk to each other.
Right.
And it's like, that's kind of one of the reasons why I say healthy relationship, because none of the podcasts I mentioned, you and us, are not, exclusive to this, but like the people that we know that have successful podcasts have those kind of relationships. Like even when the mic's not on, we're all still talking to each other.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with that.
And so having questions, having topics is good. You're here because I'm running an experiment.
Okay.
I came
I'm
across
your rat in a cage. Sorry, I was just been listening to Billy Corgan's podcast.
Okay. Okay. Well, you know what? Oh, one of the other things that's happened twice, that's happened 1.5 times that's happened since you were last on.
Yeah.
Is I've gone on 1.5 musical journeys.
Nice.
And I showed you the playlists and the bands and the albums that were included in this. In fact, in my more modern journey that I'm in right now, I'm in 1994, which is apparently an amazing year for music.
It sure shit is.
That's a thing for that's for our liner notes.
I was just gonna say, you're right in my wheelhouse.
When we get back there, but I just wanted to say, like, the amount of our liner notes episodes that poor scheduling has taken from us.
Mm-hmm.
Since those journeys, we should really find a way to make this a regular recording slot. Anyway, I ran across the Proust Questionnaire, which apparently used to be used in the 70s as like a game night. Like couples and, would get together and drink and just ask each other these probing questions. And I said, well, I have 4 very good friends and I'd like them to all come back on the show, but I don't want to just it to be a phone call. Like it can be, but
hangout.
Let's do a little bit more. So you we're going in reverse order. You were my best friend from most recent. Right. And then we'll go back to Zapata. And so you get first choice of all of these questions to ask me, and we'll probably bounce them off of each other. But obviously I probably set some of this up in the intro. So without further ado, what's the first question you want to ask out of this list?
Let's go heavy off.
Okay.
Start. Like I see, I'm not going to name them, but I see a couple here and I'm like, I've got nothing for that. Some of them are probing and some of them are odd. I don't even know that if you asked me some of them, I would have an answer. Okay. To be honest. But let's start heavy and really get into it, because I think it'll also lend itself to our lead up conversation, as far as like podcasting and things like that go. But Palmer.
Yeah.
Your question is, what is your main fault?
Ooh, main fault. So I hate this question, by the way, because this is one of those I've been looking for. I've found my consulting space to make a little bit of money by editing and producing podcasts.
Nice.
It's not full gainful employment, 9 to 5, whatever. I do get to make my own hours.
Hustle.
Yeah, but I mean, and so I get to make my own hours, and it's kind of fun. But before I kind of landed here, and it kind of took off a little bit, I was looking for a job. An interview. This is one of those standard interview questions too, right? What are your weaknesses? Is usually how
I work too hard.
Yeah,
I'm a perfectionist.
But my main fault. So I would say, oddly, I wonder if it changed in the last 2 months.
Well, maybe.
Because obviously having a baby changes everything. And so before, in a non-work setting where I'm being asked this question, I would kind of like lean towards the workaholicism of everything.
So like, do you think you get tunnel vision and solely focused on things?
No, I think workaholic is half of it, and the other half is the lack of celebration. And that's a personality thing. I don't celebrate things. I don't celebrate birthdays. I don't celebrate milestones for myself. If you, I'll send you a card for your birthday.
Does it make you uncomfortable? Is that the?
No, it doesn't make me uncomfortable. I just don't. It's just not inherent in who I am.
Sure.
And one of the reasons I point that out as a fault in hindsight now that my mother texts us and goes, "Happy 2-month
Okay.
It's like, oh, or happy 1 month, or happy, he's been out a
Celebrating
week.
markers and milestones and
They're
pointing out points of your journey.
So, which is fine, but they're also milestones, and they should be celebrated, and I understand that. But for myself, especially when it comes to my passion projects, it's always on to the next thing. And I do think in removing myself a little bit from the situation, there is probably a fault there, right? Like I should be happy that I did however many blog posts. I don't know how many blog posts I've done. I haven't missed a Thursday in, I don't know, at least 7 years now. And so that just keeps going on. I'm sure I've passed many milestones, right? And the podcast, Steph and I announcing a healthy baby boy on the podcast is episode 150, right? That's a round number. It also means that because I'm every 2 weeks, I'm approaching 3 or 6 years. These are milestones that I probably should take the time for, but like, even though I'm saying it now, I'm on to the next one. Like I'm not taking the time to celebrate 150. I'm not taking the time to go, all right, what special thing am I going to do for 6 years? I just move on. And I think that's probably more of a fault. And maybe having a kid who's going to want to celebrate things, birthdays and other milestones, maybe that'll kind of soften the edge of that fault. But for now, I'm still in that, like, I'll celebrate for him, I'll celebrate for her, I'll celebrate for you, but for me, it's fine. I don't need any. I'm all right. I'm not. No thanks.
Okay, so 2 things. One, if you don't celebrate the points and the things that you have worked hard for, then what are you working hard for? If there's no joy in it,
well, I think
you don't take the moment to appreciate it.
So there is joy in it. Like I find, like I've found a joy, not only in the recording's always fun, but I've managed to find some joy in the editing. Obviously for the blog, but also for the podcast, when I write the intros and outros and when I write the blog posts, there's a joy in the act of creation and writing.
And the satisfaction in completing the task.
So I think part of it is that the joy is just somewhere else. I don't need to celebrate it because the fact that I have this thing, the fact that anybody's listening to this right now is, I put what I can into this, but I don't put I don't put blood and sweat into this. Maybe it gets hot in the basement, but I'm putting my joy into this.
Or you're pulling joy from doing it.
Yes.
I see that. Okay.
But I think that's a fault, though, because I do think that people like you and Steph and my parents, the people who see me sacrifice maybe a night out to edit, they would. I think it's now having a child. It's looking back and going, I think the people around me would benefit from my taking the time to celebrate. Versus,
there is point 2. We're not going to peel the onion back enough to really understand why you won't allow yourself that moment to celebrate and put the attention spotlight on yourself, whatever that is. It might be a guy thing. I'm not sure. Like birthdays and that. I'm like, maybe leave me alone and let me go golfing today.
Okay.
I feel that, and I don't know what that is. So I see where you're coming from. However, once you have a family, or maybe especially when you have immediate family, children, and you see it, from 1,000-yard view or whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes those celebrations, like Kristen says this all the time because it was just her birthday, they're not for you, right? So your kid is going to want to make you a cool painting, with dad with the backwards D in the front. You're going to get those because they want to celebrate you do you know what I mean? And then you have to allow them those moments for you to go, you know what? You need to show them the grace to have in those situations. Okay. So it'll change. Yeah, it will. So I have 2 questions for you. Okay. One, are you good with celebrating? Like, is that I guess ignoring the birthday thing. Sure. Are like, you did celebrate. I remember you guys celebrating 300 and 400, or maybe 200 and 400, maybe not every
podcast milestone. I know you've celebrated some.
Sure. Yeah.
But are you, for celebration, like, that kind of stuff, or are you kind of like me, head down onto the next?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of head down onto the next, and life is just busy like that. But in a moment where time is allowed, yes, I will celebrate.
Okay.
I like to have a good time.
All right. And
things are worth celebrating. And I just think taking a moment to appreciate any achievement or milestone or what. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's toot the horn a little bit.
And then I get to ask this back, like, what is your main fault?
Oh, my main fault. And it's been with me for as long as I can remember. And I don't know how to phrase it because I'm sure it's a common fault, but maybe you can help me with it. But my biggest fault is letting things go. Oh. When I say that, I don't mean you and I just got into an argument and I can't let it go. What I mean is you and I start a podcast, and for the first 2 months we're communicating 3 times a week. Hey, how about this idea? How about that idea? Okay, I'll throw that in the doc. Okay, call me tonight. We'll work over things. Yep. And then we're recording every Thursday night and so on and so forth. And then 6 months from now, maybe we're communicating once a week and we're recording once a month, and then so on and so forth. Or if I get into something like, hey, maybe I should take up tennis, I'll grab a racket. And, I'll buy all the stuff, and then I'll take lessons, and then I'm playing, and then I'll join a league. And then maybe I go to the league every second week. And then,
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying?
I do.
And it's been persistent, not just in my hobbies or interests, it's in my relationships. I had a major move 16 years ago. I left the middle of the country. I moved out closer to the West Coast.
Yeah.
Not on the coast, but you get the point.
Yeah.
I had a large network of friends and people. And when I left, I stayed in touch to a degree, and I was pretty, and some of this is common, but like now I'm in touch with none of those people. And I lived in that place for 25 years. And there's friends that I went to high school with and university with, and who saw me who were at my wedding.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
And now I don't even know where they live.
But that means you have let go. Or is it
the fault? The fault is that I let things go.
I have a problem saying that that's a fault, though, because just for my own experience, right? And I know the baby takes time, so yes. There are things I won't have time for. But before the baby arrived, I was having trouble playing guitar, picking up a bass, and getting on the drum kit to get a little bit better. Once a week on those 3 instruments. I just, for some reason, even though I would make the time, like it'd be like, well, I'll just pick up this bass again, like 3 weeks of bass, and like, oh, I haven't picked up a drumstick or a pick for a guitar in like 3 weeks. Like, and so that moderation thing, that's a problem and that's 3 instruments, right? Like you're talking about many friendships and many hobbies,
interests, yes.
And so I almost think there could be a fault with letting it go, but there's a benefit to letting it go too, because it means that you can move on to the next thing.
I think it's a fault though, in that.
Do you think you give up too easy? I
give up too easily. I like, you know what it is? It's accountability is one. Holding myself accountable.
Okay.
Right. That would be, I think, if I have to phrase the fault, it's holding myself accountable to something that I would like to do or I want. And I will easily go, and shrug it off and let it go. And then how I know it's a fault or, a negative part of my personality or my life is that I will regret it later. Like the most recent example right now is our liner notes. The podcast I started 6-7 years ago that you were a part of. My uncle started with me. My cousin was on. And then in the more recent years, doing it with Matt.
Yeah. And
it's twofold with that. I've really enjoyed getting to know Matt. I consider him a close personal friend. I enjoy him as a person. We've met in real life and spent time together. And in the beginning of our relationship via the podcast, we were regular communicators. And we were doing the show regularly. Yes, we missed here and there, but for the most part, every 2 weeks we had a consistent, we out of 40 possible recording dates, we were getting 36 to 40 episodes, right?
Yep.
But since Kristen's diagnosis in that, and I'm not using that as an excuse, it's more of a time marker than anything else.
I gotcha.
Where we used to communicate more often, it's a lot less. He's still making the effort. This is not anything about him in particular, but just, I just find that there's times where I could reach out where I normally would have, but instead I'm just sitting there sort of vegging on something else.
So I will interject and say that there is something else at play here, because I love your wife, but when you and I talk,
yes,
I always ask about you because I feel like nobody's asking about you, and that's not just you. I know other people where I always ask about the caregiver as opposed to the person going through it, because nobody's asking about them.
Sure.
And I want to make sure you're okay, because if you're okay, then I think Kristen's probably better off, right?
Right.
So you have to give yourself some slack for that. But the other part is, we all have our ebbs and flows. Like, the next person to do the Proust questions with me is Bill Sweeney, and I love the man, but if I don't call him, he'll never call me.
Yes,
right?
and I'm guilty of that. I'm probably in the same category as Bill.
And so,
sadly.
but that's a two-way street. Like, I know that, so I will call you. And even if we don't connect for 7 or 8 or 9 calls in a row, probably, over the course of like 5 weeks, I know eventually we will.
Right. And that's what makes you a good friend. And especially for me. But
it's twofold, because there are people that would be like, why do you keep calling me? I just don't have the time. Do you know what I mean? Like, so that's on you for being a good friend too, because I'm going to do that, but you're okay with it. Like, we'll get there when we get there. I think we both have, if we go back to the interview thing, we both have weak faults, which is good, right? That's what you want. That's what you want. So we'll move on.
Okay, fair enough.
Let's go to what's next.
Okay. This is the kind of worms I think you would be most afraid of.
Okay.
But are you ready for Palmer? Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
What country would you most like to live
in? Okay. So, I think right now, Canada. But I also think that in the before times, Canada.
This is exactly why I asked this. I mean, there's some extra dressing on this question because of the last 100 days or so. But
it's so there's so
you've always been my Canadian counterpart that lives in America.
Yeah,
your love of things of this country comes long before any sort of political climate.
This is true. So and you know what? So you and I kind of connected, ignoring the music and the podcasting, through 2 things very specifically, the CFL and baseball, right? And so there was a little bit of Canadian stuff going on, and I didn't know how Canadian they were, but at the time I was a fan of the band. Which is mostly Canadian. And there were other things. I like Neil Young. There were some Canadian things, right? Yeah. And then you introduced me to the hip, which kind of opens another door to Canada. There's a comedy troupe out west, further west than you in Canada, that kind of opens the door a little bit further. And then, we discovered Corner Gas, which is kind of international. I don't know that most of that humor is not Canadian. It's just small town. But there is some Canadianity to it.
A lot, and maybe being Canadian, that is probably one of the most Canadian shows we produced.
And then, but most recently, so all of that is just, and early on in this episode, I had a Canadian on who we talked about my interest in Canada specifically. Sure. Like, I got grilled about it, which was fine. Like, I'm genuinely interested. But like, the other part of it is, recently, Steph and I have found a new Canadian show to watch. Mm-hmm. And it might be the most Canadian show. and it's called Still Standing. And the reason I say it's the most Canadian show is because Johnny Harris, the comedian, goes around to small towns that have survived, and he puts a positive spin on all of it. That could not happen in America. Like, there are small towns dying all over America and have been for the last 50 years since farming stopped being a man-made endeavor. And, one guy with the right plow can do the work of what used to be 10 guys, right?
Right. Yep.
And he goes to these towns where lumber's left and the mill closed down and the mine went away, and he finds a positive spin on it.
Yes, he did one on Okanagan Falls. It's a 10-minute drive south of me.
Every time he's near you, we're like, ooh. And so it's one of those things where I think that now, when you ask that question, not only will I say Canada, but I'll say like one of those towns that was on Still Stand. Like, send me to one of those small towns that, as long as
Okanagan Falls are building new houses out there. I mean, that'd be a great opportunity for you
as long as I've got an internet connection, I can do my job and keep the podcast going, right? Like, I'm fine. I don't know what it is. And here's the kicker. Here's the real kicker. 20 years ago, I might have said Australia or New Zealand.
Okay.
Because they're also English speaking, and I'm probably not in a position in my life. I know if I moved somewhere like Spain or, Germany or Poland, where like if you're there, you'll pick up eventually. It's not like learning the language while living in America. Like you'd use it. You would eventually pick it up. But I always defaulted to English speaking places when I thought about like if I was going to living abroad. And I don't know. There's also this climate change aspect, which is, I live in Pennsylvania, which is now subtropical. It was not that way when I was growing up. It's getting warmer. There are smells and scents in springtime and summer that smell like, with the humidity and the heat, that remind me of my grandfather's house in Baltimore when I was 10. I'm 30 years removed from that. And I'm like, why is that in my house up here? Like, this is a different parallel completely. That should not be up here. Right. So now, in answering this question, it's not just English speaking. It's not just because I like the culture and I acknowledge that Canada has its own culture. It's also that like, well, it's cooler up there and I don't want it to be any warmer.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, now being a new father in the current political climate, how are you feeling down there? And again, you don't have to get into specifics.
So
we don't have to talk
how am I feeling? My son, you sent us a nice gift. My son wrote you a thank you card that said, my parents tell me you're nice Canadians who will take me in if stuff goes south. And
it's going south, Palmer. It's going south.
And you said thank you, not no, when you received it. So I think that answers the question. So what about you? I mean, obviously, within your own family, there have been plenty of Canadians that have emigrated to the United States.
We don't talk about that.
But, if you were going to, if you and the girls and Kristen were open to, we're going to go together as a family somewhere else. We want to leave Canada. Like, and they're like, but Dad gets to choose. Where are you going?
Well, when Dad was younger, he was enthralled with all things English, music specifically. And so I would have picked up and moved somewhere in the UK. I don't know enough. I've never been, for all my love affair with the culture and what's come out of that country. I've never been. So I have no experience to say, well, I'd probably like to live in North London or, what have you. But honestly, right now, especially with the things that have happened in your country and the most recent threats to my country's sovereignty, I have never been a prouder Canadian. There, I am in the right country.
Okay.
I would never pick up and leave, and especially now. There's
Okay.
there's too much. I love it here too much. There's too much work to do.
Yep.
And there's nothing that's solidified that more than the events of the last few months.
Yeah.
Just after that came out, where your president was
51st
referring
state.
to state
Crap.
and
Yeah.
calling our prime minister governor, and whether it's a stunt or whatever the play is there,
Yeah.
we took it very, very seriously up here. And I don't think he or other Americans knew how seriously. Because let's be fair, for the most part, Americans don't think about us. They don't even realize we're up here.
Yeah.
Or that we are a 51st state. Like, do we share something? Are they kind of like, do you know what I mean? We're an afterthought.
And because it was such a friendly alliance, you don't like, it's almost like you don't question
all your stupid wars.
You don't question your friends so
Yes.
much, right? Like you care more about the people that hate you than the people that like you. And so
well, it's like going to your cafeteria table with the same 5 people who've had your back since, grade 6 and flipping over their lunch tray.
Yeah. But
what?
I will say, maybe it's because I know more of you than the average American. Like I was expecting a response. I was very happy for you that it happened so quickly. Like you guys closed ranks within like hours. Like I was like, man, it'll take a couple of days. No, it's like hours later, elbows up, let's go. Like
yes, there are elbows up flags. There was a period, much like in America, when we were going through COVID. There is a conservative faction that was, against masking and vaccinations, and we had a freedom convoy. That all happened up here. There is conservative elements all through this country. We're different, but there are some similarities. That said, during that time, the Canadian flag was kind of appropriated.
Yep.
Right there, if you saw someone driving their truck down the street with the hockey stick and the flag on it, flapping the back, you kind of knew where that guy or girl stood.
Now it's kind of, you've reclaimed it back. Yeah,
that's correct. Because now it's flying on houses everywhere. I mean, it's amazing. We were sold out of flags for a little while. We had to, and then our governments working with other governments outside. I mean, we were happy to be your trade partner. We loved the relationship, but with the uncertainty and the threats, it's like, okay, well, let's go with our other friends now. We've got each other, and just quickly shift it. I mean, it's to the point now where I go to my wife's gone to the grocery store, and you will see people, old people like me with the glasses down the nose, looking at the finer details of the box because they want to see where it's made.
Yep.
And there has been an absolute refusal to buy American things. The tourism that has nosedived, especially all the town. And I feel bad in that I don't think this is Americans that have caused this, but a faction of the country, and then the foolishness of the election.
Yep.
However, these are the things that we have to do to make sure that we're ready in case something else crazy comes down the pipe at any moment's notice. And yes, it was immediate and it was swift.
Yep.
It's still happening.
Yeah. And I if you'll have me, we'll move to one of those small, still standing towns. I promise. We don't have to live in the heart of anything. And at least at the moment, my dollar is still strong. So, I might actually be able to buy a house. That's a whole different thing.
Clock's ticking on that one.
Yeah. All right. So, let's go. Let's move on to the third question.
All right. So we started hard, then we went a little more introspective, and now we're going back to I don't know, would you call it negative? But I guess it has negative connotations.
Sure.
And the question is, Palmer, what would be your greatest misfortune?
So, greatest misfortune. Now, there was a certain period of time when I would have equated my greatest misfortune to being my greatest fear, which would have been boredom. Okay. I don't know that that's the case now. I think, my greatest misfortune now has a lot more to do with having a wife and child, and the welfare of my wife and child probably above myself. And obviously that's a new thing. I'm
Yep.
I'm sitting here talking to you with a 2-month-old and having only been married for like, I don't know, 7 months. But that it doesn't take long for that mindset change to really kick in.
Yeah.
If we ignore family, I don't know that I could put a finger on a greater misfortune than the one I have already endured, in that I had a job I liked and it went away. And when it went away, a lot of people asked me what I wanted to do, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And maybe even more to a point, while I love editing podcasts and producing them for money and for free for myself, like this one, I still don't know that that's definitively what I want to do. And not knowing the answer to that question has been pretty horrifying of late, because the older I get, regardless of how things change, like I'm aware that the generation after us, specifically, and I'm a shoulder generation guy, but millennials and the generation beyond millennials are not going to look at themselves as their job. I'm Jason, I'm Chris first, and I happen to work in X, Y, and Z.
Mm-hmm.
But being in the shoulder generation and kind of a little bit more with a Generation X kind of mentality, we grew up thinking that, hi, I'm Chris, I'm a banker.
Yeah. I am my job.
I am my job. And so not having an answer isn't the worst thing in the world, but it kind of is, because I find myself like grasping for an identity. Yeah, I am also a husband and father, but like, what else am I? Because I go, all right, well, if we break it down, I'm an editor and producer of podcasts. I'm a podcast host. I'm a blogger. I'm a writer. I'm a consultant. I'm a marketer. Like, yeah, that I just named you 7 things plus father and husband. That's 9. Like, okay. And I run. So I'm a runner. That's 10 different things, but what am I? Do you know what I mean? And so because I still have that maybe baby boomer, Gen X, we want to define it. I think I'm living through that kind of misfortune by not being able to put a point on it. And I don't know. I think every day, every week, every month that goes by, especially since losing that job many years ago, it's gotten a little bit easier for myself. But I live in a world with other people, and those people ask these questions, and I still have no answer. And I think right now, that's my biggest misfortune. If you take, family out of the equation. And it's
Right.
just, I would like to be able to answer the question. And look, there are projects, one very specifically that you know about that I haven't told anybody about yet. That's also going on, which would add just another label, another job title to that list.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm okay with that. But I also live in a world where people want an answer, and I don't have a good one. And that's kind of been one of the reasons that I'm doubling down on my luck and my good fortune to have the paid gigs I do have, because I don't have to go out and answer that question. But there may come a time when I do, and every day that goes on, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. And this is the honest answer. I can lie, but but if you asked me every week on Fridays for an answer and even said lie about it, I don't know that I'd give you the same answer 5 Fridays in a row. You know what I mean? Like, so even trying to just force an answer, I don't think I'd be able to come up with the same one consistently. And I think that's kind of my current misfortune.
Right. Yeah. Well, it because you get caught because it's, your situation forced you to ask yourself the question, what do I want to do? where before you didn't need to. You were what you were doing.
Yeah.
And you were satisfied with that, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I was.
But I also wonder if the answer to that question isn't necessarily, because it is, depending on who's asking.
Yeah.
It's more often than not, what are you going to do? Not what do you want to do?
That's fair.
Because at the end of the day, especially as a family man or just a person navigating this world, there are just certain things you need to eat.
Yeah.
The lights need to come on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you need to clothe yourself. So there becomes need more than want. So I think what you've discovered more than anything is you may have learned what you don't want, but you know what you need.
Yes. Yeah.
And that, so you can take that question a couple of ways.
That's true. So what about you? What if I turned it around? What is your greatest?
I mean, mine's the simple. So I took this as what would be your greatest, more like in your mind, if it was, what could happen to you that would be your greatest.
But I want to immediately caveat it by saying take family out of it, because I feel
then I don't have an answer, because that, and here's why I say that.
You can weather anything yourself. Yeah,
I've just found that that's it. Anything that happens that, if my business went belly up, those people that I'm worried that misfortune would befall would close ranks around me, and I would have a support system.
Okay.
Right? Like, I don't know that there's anything that could happen to me where I wouldn't feel supported. Yep. And, that is my great fortune.
Yes.
So I'm not, if I lost my eyesight, if the economy tanked and I did, I'm a small business owner, and I would, just like you did, I don't know what I would want to be, but I know that I can do something.
Yes.
And I would do everything.
Yep.
To again, avoid misfortune befalling my immediate family. And I would say that if we go back to the fault question, a fault I had in my younger years before, we're young, we're dumb.
Yep.
And you're not responsible, or again, here comes that word, accountable.
Yep.
To people per se, other than yourself. Having a family, being married, having a partner, having children, it's really their fortunes that I'm most invested in. And that wasn't the case for me. And yet, yes, obviously children are different, but I don't think I was as accountable to others and people who were important to me in my life.
Yep. From
lack of awareness, ignorance, whatever you want to call it, that having people who mean everything to me, this close to me, the light bulb comes on and goes, this is what it really means to care about someone outside of yourself.
Yeah.
And I care, back to your celebration point, and not celebrating things for yourself. Again, if my birthday got forgotten, I'm not going to be in a snit all day because of it. Okay. But if I had to watch one of my children behave in such a way, or like, I don't care, it would break my heart.
Okay.
And so that to me truly is the greatest misfortune, because I don't know that there's anything more important than that.
That's fair. I think the other thing which is funny is, like, I know personally, as far as like being there for other people.
Yeah.
I could argue that both you and I have a similar fault in that, like, we will do maybe excess for other people that we may not do for ourselves. And I bring it up because it's a conversation point I have with a friend all the time, where I'm like, you wouldn't let your family do this. Like, you're working more than you should. You're not taking time for yourself. And if this was happening to your sister or your mother or me, you would call them out on it, but you're willing to do it for yourself.
Yes.
And who's going to protect you? And I think you and I maybe fit into that category. We're like, I think of late, part of it's circumstantial, part of it's just life and getting older. I think we are starting to step back and do some of the things for others now for ourselves, and taking time, which is why I don't blame you for not emailing back me or calling me back or emailing Matt back when you can just veg, because you've been on your feet for 18 hours and that's fine. Like, no, you know what I mean? Like, even Matt would say, like, dude, it's cool. Like, it's fine. Like, you don't need to kill yourself to send, like, it'll It'll simmer. We'll get back to it. And just like this is like, you and I have spoken on the phone maybe 4 times since the last time, like really talked 4 times since 5 years ago when you were last on this show.
Sure. Yep.
Is that a great thing? No, but you know what? We still care. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
I don't,
yeah.
like, we don't talk as much. We don't record as much, but nothing's changed. And that's fine. Right? Like, and I think we have to give ourselves that slack.
Sure.
Like we would others, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Fair.
But I will say, whether it's your show or mine, we're not going to wait 3.5 or 4 more years.
Agreed.
So, one Proust Questionnaire episode down, more to come, though not right away. They'll be spread out. And what did we learn? That my friend Chris and I are happy to just catch up and talk? That we're willing to work on ourselves, even if it's on mic? Even if we can't pull back every layer of the onion, we still dive down as deep as possible in the time we have together? Well, as I've recorded the others, this may be a common theme, but there's another theme that's perhaps more important. We're open and willing to talk. You can joke about us as podcasters. Of course you can talk. But the thing is, before we were co-hosts together, Chris and I would talk. Before I was a podcaster, I would talk at length with Zapata and Chris and Bill and Chris and with my wife, Steph. There are people in my life where a phone call could easily be recorded and released as this podcast. And that's just on the phone for us who are on the call. We talk, but more than that, we communicate. That's what this is all about. Maybe the Proust Questionnaire is a great way to open the door if you can't think of a way through on your own. But exchanging words and ideas with others is something I don't ever want to take for granted. It's at the core of my being, and if you're listening to this, it's probably important to you too. Thanks for listening to the Palmer Files episode 152. And now for the official business. The Palmer Files releases every 2 weeks on Tuesdays. If you're still listening, I encourage you to join the discussion. You can find all related ways to contact myself and my guest Chris in the show notes. Chris and his lovely wife Kristen can be heard on How Was Your Week, Honey? And Chris and Matt, sometimes myself and many others, can be heard on Our Liner Notes. If you're curious, there's enough backlog that you can start now and still not be done by the time new episodes start to air regularly. Bill Sweeney was an executive producer for this episode. The music for this episode was provided by Henno Heitur. Email and comments can be sent to this show at thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. And remember, your home for all things Agent Palmer is agentpalmer.com. Chris, I have one final question for you.
Lay it on me.
The Proust Questionnaire was for friends to get together and ask and talk about, not in just an intimate one-on-one setting, but like with a bunch of people.
Sure.
Like in a party setting. You asked some very, very hard-hitting questions. Does this sound like a fun party game for you in front of not just you and me, but like your wife, my wife, maybe a couple other couples? Like, this was a game in the 70s.
Oh, simpler times, Palmer. I wonder though. I mean, the questions are only as probing as the answer that you wish to give.
This is
right.
True.
Right. So if you said, "What would be your greatest misfortune?" I mean, you could have said, "Well, I just bought these brand new Nikes. I'd hate for them to get lost."
Or a flat tire, like.
Yes.
Okay.
They're only as deep as you answer them, right?
All it takes is one person to give like a serious answer, and everybody else is like either I'm not going to answer like that, or I got to come up with something good.
Right. There's pressure.
You can't. And the other thing
is,
be
a safe environment. I guess this couldn't be a. Hey, we're all parents of kids that go to the same school and we're having a get together. So let's really get to know each other.
That's
Do you
true.
know what I mean? This would be like, I could see you coming on How Was Your Week, Honey with Steph, and as a group of 4, getting into this stuff, because there's a base level of understanding and knowledge of each other that we could kind of go to that next step. And I don't need you to color in a lot of your answers because I already know something of you in order to know where you're coming from.
I think there's the other piece to this is like, I feel like you need a level of I guess media savvy in order to not be like Ditto, right? Like,
sure.
like if ignoring the political climate, if 3 people want to say Canada as the places they live, the reasoning for it becomes diminishing returns by the time the 3rd person says it.
Absolutely.
And so you need this kind of on your feet. You don't have to be a podcaster, but just some savvy to be like, well, I
see where this conversation has been. I need it to go
somewhere else. Yeah. And if you're playing it for a game, even if you're being serious, you can do some tongue-in-cheek stuff if you want. Like I never thought about England, but like, if I'm being honest, there is one downside to moving to Canada, and that is rail is good in infrastructure, but if I went to Europe, everything is a 6-hour train ride away.
Correct.
Right? Like, and look, that's probably not Canada and North America in general. When we gave up rail, we really gave up rail, maybe to the detriment of the planet, our own time, our sanity, everything. But there is a part of it that's like, 6 hours not driving to be almost anywhere, like in like 17 different countries. That does sound kind of nice.
It does sound pretty cool. I mean, again, if you're in that adventure space in your life.
Well, that's the other thing too. I don't know that. Yeah. I mean,
right. The gorgeous thing of our country, and you and I have talked about this, but just for your listeners and anyone who may not know, we're as wide, if not wider than you, but 90% or whatever it is of our population is within 100 kilometers, 60 miles of the Canadian-American border. But each individual city, your Vancouver, your Calgary, to Regina, to Winnipeg, all those cities are 6 to 10 hour drive away from each other.
Yep.
And so to go to the other major cities, road tripping is one of our greatest pastimes. I mean, everybody in this country knows a great road trip. From the generation I grew up in, load up in the station wagon, family vacation style, and away you go, right? And it's just a part of our culture, and I love that. So yes, you're right. I can't just hop on a train and go see Ottawa, today. But I could plan a 2-week family vacation to tour the country and get there.
That's fair, and I think that's the other. Maybe that's another cultural divide. Is like every time I hear Canadians of any kind talk about road trips, it is a discover your, like, get to know your own country.
Your backyard. Yes. Yeah.
Anytime an American talks about it, it's all about the destination.
Right.
Like if it's, I'm in Pennsylvania and I know people that have road tripped to Florida to go to Disney. They couldn't tell me one thing, if they even tried to stop, for the 14 different states they probably drove through to get to Florida. Right. And it's like, well, what about part of the destination is the journey or whatever. Like that quote is like, the journey is part of it. Like, so
it's the roadside stops. It's the giant catfish outside of Selkirk to take pictures in front of. Do you know what I mean? It's the endless miles of flat wheat fields where, quarter gas joke, you can watch your dog run away for 3 days.
Although there is a part of it, which is part of that is we removed that, right? You're talking about the old Route 66, which the moment we started building interstates, we built something faster, smoother, and completely removed from the old 66 where you have to get off of the highway to get
Through
gas,
towns. Yeah.
but there's nothing that you can just stop and see. And so we kind of did that to ourselves. I would like to see us go back to some of that stuff. I think it would be, I don't know, great to get to kind of know like your neighbors.
Absolutely. But I think that's coming back up here thanks to what's happening with you guys.
I'll say this. I know my neighbors. Like
Sure.
Steph was pregnant over the winter. So like we've surprised a few neighbors because you're just not out at the same time.
Sure.
But now, the baby's met most of our neighbors. I think we've talked to our neighbors a little bit more now that like it's spring again. And I'm also, I've got a neighbor who's moving, and I'm like, she was a great neighbor. You know what I mean? Like it's just like, oh,
yes.
Okay, well,
no, I feel that.
Yeah. So anyway, I think that for us, this is a great party game, but maybe not. Maybe you're right. It's very specific company.
Yes, absolutely.
What would have been your fourth? Just so I know.
I was gonna go with, and maybe I'll just shorten it into my last question for you quickly. I was going to go with, what would be what was your favorite occupation, or what would mean happiness for you? But I'm just going to cut to the chase and say, how's your playing going?
Okay, so not as well as I'd like.
Of course.
But I am starting to get it picked up a little bit more. But most specifically, I'm not practicing like I want to.
Gotcha.
But I am playing for the baby to get him used to hearing live music, I guess. And I do have to, I don't know if it's my ego's in the way or my lack of self-confidence in singing. So I'm still only playing. It's a whole different kind of can of worms.
Sure.
But I am playing, and I'm playing the things I know inherently, but I'm also trying to learn like some hip songs. And so I'm playing some practice stuff, but it's just kind of like, kid, your mom likes music and your dad likes playing music, so get used to this.
Sure.
And it's, so I would like to play more. Again, part of it is also, I want to pick up my bass more often, but it's all the way down in at least with the acoustic stuff. Like I have an acoustic in the living room.
Yeah. You just pick it up.
I have a 3/4 size acoustic in his bedroom. So like,
okay.
There's always an instrument around, but like the main axes, so to speak, are all down here.
So it's like an appointment. Like you have to purposefully go down there with.
And the same is true of like the drum kit. It's still an electronic drum kit, so I can still play whenever, even with the baby. It's just, and I was getting okay. Like I went from very mediocre to okay. But that was a few months ago. So I don't know. I might be back to mediocre. We'll see.
Well, like all things too, like you said, it ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
Right. You make some progress, you fall back a bit, you make a little more progress. So
the real key is, this is how I know it's been too long. Like I have to trim my nails before I can play again.
Gotcha.
It's like, it's been way too long if I need to do that. But I'm getting there. I'm going to have to trim my nails soon because it's like, I don't want to mess up this fretboard and time to, okay, well, let's make some time, but it's getting there. I have to get the chops back up.
Gotcha. Nice. Well, keep at it.
Yes. Like everything else.